Hello fellow food lovers. Today I will be making beef and bitter melon with black bean and garlic sauce. I will include scrambled eggs and baby corn with it. So you will need a half a pound of sliced beef, 2 bitter melons, 3 eggs, and half a can of baby corn. For the beef marinade, you will need Chinese white pepper, Chinese cooking wine, soy sauce, sesame oil, and cooking oil. For the sauce, you will need 1 tablespoon of Chinese fermented black beans, 3 pieces of garlic, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, 1 teaspoon of chicken powder, and 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch. Okay, so we're going to make the egg mixture now. So we're going to make a cornstarch slurry. I'm going to take 1 level tablespoon of cornstarch, add 1/8 of a cup of water, and stir that well so it's all dissolved. The cornstarch is dissolved into the water. Then we're going to add 3 eggs to that. Okay, we're going to take a fork, give the eggs a good whisk. Okay, we got half a pound of thinly sliced beef here. We're going to marinate it. So we're going to throw in some Chinese white pepper powder, a splash of Chinese cooking wine, a splash of soy sauce, a splash of sesame oil, and a splash of cooking oil. You want to mix the sauce into the meat with your fingers. If you don't want to use your fingers, you could use chopsticks or a spoon. Okay, we have some Chinese fermented black beans. They're actually soybeans. They're used as a flavoring agent for black bean and garlic sauce. So we're going to take a tablespoon of that, and they're whole. Cut them into little pieces with a kitchen knife. Set that aside. We're going to take out 3 pieces of garlic. So I like to smash the garlic with the side of the knife before I chop it up. It makes it easier to mince it. And set that aside. Okay, I have half a can of baby corn, which I've sliced in half already. And we're going to use 2 bitter melon. So how I clean the bitter melon, because you can eat the pith that's on the inside, I slice it in half lengthwise, and then I'll take a spoon and I'll scrape the pith out, going in a specific direction, going from the tip to the stem. If you go in that direction, it's easier to scrape out the pith. If you go in the opposite direction, it's really difficult. So yeah, so starting at the tip and moving towards the stem, I use a tablespoon and I use to scrape out the pith and throw that out. Okay, so that's a stem. I'm going to turn it around. Okay, tip to stem. Yeah, so the only part that you eat is the outside layer. Okay, once that's done, I'm going to slice it into slices. Oh, first I got to slice the stem off. You can't eat that, it's tough. And then I'll start at the tip and I'll slice at a diagonal. Nice thin slices. So I've already cleaned out the insides of the second bitter melon, so I'm just going to cut the stems off and then slice it. Yeah, so you'll need 2 bitter melons for this dish. Sometimes if you go to the grocery store, you get these huge bitter melons. So you might need only 1.5 or maybe even 1. And sometimes you get really small ones, so you might need 3. But an average sized bitter melon, you'll use 2 of them per dish. Okay, so I'm going to make the eggs now. The non-stick skillet is all hot. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. Swirl that around. Give the eggs a stir and then pour it in. So once the eggs are set, I'm going to use this spatula and push it over to one side of the pan and tilt it so that the raw egg flows over to the other side. So once that's set, I'm going to push it over again, and any excess raw egg will flow over to the empty side. And once that's all set, I'm going to turn it over and cook the other side. So you want to take the eggs out when they're still kind of soft. You don't want it to be so well cooked that it's hard. So once the bottom's set, I'm going to cut it into 10 to 12 big pieces. And then I'm going to set it aside. Okay, so I have the wok out now, and it's on high heat. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cooking oil, and then I'm going to cook the beef. So you only want to cook the beef till it's about 50% cooked, because you're going to finish cooking off the meat when it's with the veggies. So you want to give it an occasional stir. You don't want to be constantly stirring the meat, and you want to make sure it's flipped over at least once so that both sides are cooked. Okay, a couple of minutes have passed. The meat looks like it's halfway done. So we're going to take it out and set it aside. Then we're going to wash the wok before we put the veggies in. Okay, so the wok's washed. It's all heated up. The element's on high heat. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. Swirl that around. I'm going to add the black beans and the garlic. You want to let that brown a little bit in the cooking oil. It's going to infuse flavor into the cooking oil. Then once that's done, I'm going to add the bitter melon. So when you put a melon in, you want to let it cook for a minute or two before you start stirring it around. So it gives the bottom a chance to cook. And the way you stir it is you want to bring the bottom up to the top, so the top part comes down to the bottom, and then that way everything is evenly cooked. And you don't want to be constantly stirring, but you want to stir every once in a while, so everything's moved around and nothing's stuck to the bottom of the pan or of the water. Okay, so while the bitter melon's cooking, we're going to make the cornstarch slurry to thicken the sauce. So we're going to put 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch into a bowl. And we're going to add a 1/4 cup of cold water. We're going to stir that out, make sure the cornstarch is all dissolved before we add it into the sauce. So in supermarkets, there's usually two types of bitter melon. There's the Chinese bitter melon and the Indian or East Indian bitter melon. We want to use the Chinese bitter melon. It's got a smooth, bumpy surface on it. The East Indian bitter melon has a really prickly surface. They're very different looking. So you want to make sure you buy the Chinese bitter melon to make this dish. The other one won't work as well. Okay, so the bitter melon's been cooking for a while, maybe 5-6 minutes. So we added a cup of cold water for the sauce. And then we're going to add the seasoning. So we're going to add 1 teaspoon of chili powder. One tablespoon of soy sauce. This is the light soy sauce. One tablespoon of oyster sauce. So we're going to stir that up, mix the sauce in with the water. Okay, we're going to add the beef in there. Stir that around, mix the beef in with the bitter melon, and then we're going to add the baby corn. Now we're going to put a lid on that, and we're going to that helps us steam the vegetables to help it cook faster. So once the lid's on there, when the water's boiling, it produces the steam, and it kind of it'll steam the vegetables, and it'll help quicken the process of cooking it. So the lid should be on there for maybe 3-4 minutes, depending on how long and how well done you want the veggies to be. But I would say no more than 3-4 minutes. Okay, so 3-4 minutes is fine, and I've taken the lid off. So it's much done now. So we're going to give it a stir, mix the beef and the baby corn in through with the bitter melon. Then we're going to add the cornstarch slurry, give it a stir before you add it in. Then as soon as you add the cornstarch slurry, you want to stir this, give the stir fry a stir, and make sure that the cornstarch is mixed in with the sauce. If you wait too long to do the stirring, the cornstarch will clump up, and there'll be like little clumpy bits of cornstarch in your stir fry, which will look pretty ugly. Yeah, so now that the sauce is thickened, you're going to add the eggs. Give it a real gentle stir so the eggs are mixed through the stir fry. Then the dish is done, so turn the stove off. I'm going to take out a Pyrex glass pie plate, and we're going to serve it up. So usually this dish is just beef with bitter melon, or sometimes people will use pork instead of beef. But there's another popular Chinese dish that's just scrambled eggs and bitter melon. So I've combined the two basically. So I've incorporated the scrambled eggs and the beef with the bitter melon into one dish. Okay, there you go. Beef and bitter melon with scrambled eggs and baby corn. And this is a really nice dish to go with rice as well. Okay, bon appetit.